2 years ago, I went to Peru to sit with ayahuasca, also known as the vine of death. It's a sacred plant medicine used by Amazonian tribes for healing, expansion, and remembrance. Many of these shamans have begun serving the medicine to people in the Western world to help the soul liberation of humanity. It's profound inner work that I realized I wasn't quite ready for at the time. It didn't feel like a full body yes until recently. So I sat about 2 weeks ago for 3 nights in a row, and this isn't an educational or promotional video on the entirety of the medicine ceremony, the preparation, or what it entails, but more so a deep dive into my own life-changing experience with it. I sat with grandmother ayahuasca, and I have so much that I want to share. I debated putting this online at all, and I actually wasn't going to. I wanted to keep this experience so sacred and close to my heart and not really up for judgment or debate by an outside perspective. But I feel like I've shared my truest, most raw, vulnerable moments on here throughout the evolution of my spiritual growth, and it would just be a huge chunk of that missing. And I feel like my whole YouTube channel is like this human experiment that I'm having and all the trials and tribulations of it. So I just wanted to put this out here too. And I also think that so many deep truths came through that would be really beautiful to share. And I actually didn't think that I was going to sit with the medicine. I have a shaman friend, and she was telling me that some people just aren't called. Like, you really do not have to sit with this medicine to be on your spiritual journey. And so many people around me have always done it. Same thing with like psilocybin and other forms of plant medicines. And for most of my life, I've just been like completely at peace with the fact that that's not my healing. And I just wanted to be fully stabilized from within, not needing anything external. And part of me thought that plant medicines can become a vice of some sort, like that's your only way to connect with spirit and source. And I didn't want that to be the case for me. So all these years I've spent healing my depression, just trying to use my physical body, the vehicle of my breath, and it's been so healing. But I felt like there were aspects of my subconscious and ancestral wounds and trauma that I wasn't able to tap into just through my embodiment practices and through my yoga practice. And so that's what really started to call me to the medicine, was wanting to look at these things on a deeper level that I actually don't have access to with my normal state of mind. And it just fell into place divinely. I sat in a Shipibo ceremony, which is a more, some people would say like more serious ceremony, where the curandero, the medicine carrier, works one-on-one with you and what you need and sings you songs. And it's quiet and very much to yourself in your own area and space when you're sitting with the medicine. I know the other ceremonies, everyone is singing and it's maybe just like outside under the stars, but the ceremonies that I did were in a tent at night, and you can go walk around and do your own thing, but they prefer everyone to be in the tent together in the container. So I sat for 3 nights, and I actually was able to bike to the place that I was sitting with the medicine, which was so lovely. And so I'm just gonna dive right into it. My first night, I spoke to the shaman and I told him what my intentions were. I told him that I have experienced domestic abuse and I have a lot of childhood trauma that shows up in my life sometimes, not feeling super confident and just feeling like I don't want to always be good to myself, feeling shame or guilt, blockages of love that I feel like I don't know how to unpack. And so I would love for the medicine to help me release those things. So one by one, we all went up and took the medicine. People started purging immediately, and he started to sing his songs. And this shaman in particular carries Lakota prayers, Shipibo prayers, Quechua prayers, and so many beautiful medicine songs. Every time that he started to sing, I feel like people just started to purge and throw up, and he was almost like stoking the demons out of people or the density out of people. And I initially was like, I'm probably not gonna feel anything because I have a very high tolerance for things like any substances. So I'm just sitting there in meditation. I've never actually seen what my soul looks like, but I was starting to see that in the medicine journey, just the grandeur of it, having this ancient soul like so many of us on this planet. And then I started to feel immense feelings of sadness for my younger self. So I started to go into my childhood home, all of my childhood experiences where I was getting hurt, and I started to feel immensely sad for my younger self, as if I wasn't her. I was just watching her go through all these experiences. I was feeling the feeling of being completely alone in this life. I was feeling the feeling of not feeling cared for, of being unsafe, of just being so alone and lonely in this world. And it was such a heavy feeling to revisit, just fully transporting me back. I feel like to every moment where my heart was breaking, and I think that's what I asked for, so that's what I was experiencing, and I just was crying and sobbing so much, and it felt like I was revisiting every moment where my childhood innocence was lost, and I was just grieving it. It was like I was having a funeral for my past self, and I was just sobbing so much. My face was literally just on the grass, on the earth beneath me. I was trying to talk to the medicine like, I see this, I know this pain is here, she didn't deserve this, I know that this is here, I'm ready to surrender it, I'm ready to offer it up. What do I do with this pain? I know that this is here, what do I do with this? And I literally started to put my hands together and offer my younger self up to spirit, to source, to God. And I was like, I see this very wounded aspect of myself. I see that what happened to me wasn't my fault. I see that I was hurt, and it's the worst pain that I've ever experienced to witness a young child go through this. And I offer her up to you, and I release her. And I felt this fear about releasing her. I felt like I've been holding on to my wounded younger self so tightly. Like if my younger self were in form, I would have just been holding onto her hand and introducing her to everyone before I introduced myself. I needed to have this funeral for her, and that's what all those tears and all of that pain was meant for me to sit through and witness and watch that, so I could finally let it go and forgive her and forgive my past. So I offered her up to spirit and source. I knew that offering her up also meant showing up differently in my day-to-day life, showing up and not questioning my worth all the time, showing up and being okay, accepting compliments, showing up and not being afraid to be alone, which is something that happens to me sometimes, especially at night. I feel like I have PTSD or had PTSD. It was deep healing work that needed to be done. I started to come down from the medicine, I feel like after 4 hours, and so I asked for another cup. And then this second aspect of my journey was just revealing so much love and lightness to me. I started to see these visions of my past lifetimes, and the medicine kept showing me snowy mountains and icy lakes and thick, dense evergreen forests, and images of me fishing, images of me rowing a canoe, and images of me being native to this land. And I don't know what land it actually was. It definitely wasn't Venezuela or Okinawa, because both of those places are hot, like island lands. And so some past lifetimes where I was in the mountains, I felt the highest capacity of forgiveness I have ever felt. And what was coming through on the medicine is that love is the highest vibrational state that you can experience. And love is protection. Love will keep you safe from darkness, from dark entities coming into your field, and even from dark things manifesting onto your path. Like staying in the frequency of pure love, compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude are all extensions of that high vibrational love. So if you can embody compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude, those are all very chronically charged feelings and will also keep you safe. And I felt immense forgiveness for every single person who has ever done me harm, and I just felt it in my cells and in my body and in my soul. I forgive you. I forgive that house for being so horrible when I was younger. I forgive my parents. I forgive my siblings and their innocent hearts who didn't know what they were doing. I forgive anyone who has ever assaulted me. The whole time I was talking to this plant as if it were my grandmother. Like, what do I do with this? Thank you for this. How do I heal this? And just communicating with her and just also agreeing, like, I see this, thank you, I needed to see this. Or whenever I would throw up, I'd be like, I welcome this, I welcome this. And as you throw up, if you have watched any other ayahuasca videos or have done the medicine yourself, when you're purging, it's actually releasing sometimes dark matter or cleansing the inside of your body. And oftentimes, if you feel like you need to purge and you're having a bad experience, the moment that you throw up, you'll start to feel better. So it's always great to welcome the purging. I definitely had the download that loving awareness neutralizes every story. And that's what I held throughout the ceremony. I started to feel my body and intuitively just want to explore myself. And I was underneath my blanket, and so I was just holding myself and feeling how enchanting it felt to be in this body. And I was like rubbing my nipples a little bit and just feeling so curious to explore myself without the intense trauma of my childhood and sexual trauma I've experienced. And there were literally flowers and gardens growing in between in my womb, and it was like my body was this beautiful lush garden, and it wasn't tainted at all, and it was just so heavenly and luscious. And I put my hands on the outside of my yoni over my underwear. I was just feeling my body for what felt like the first time ever, feeling like this body is my own, this body is mine to explore, this body is heavenly. And I have never felt this level of acceptance and reclamation of my physical self. My yoni just felt so beautiful and incredible to touch, and like this wondrous thing that I've always had access to. And I almost felt like, whoa, I can't believe I haven't really greeted you in this way before. I love you so much. And just the pleasure that my body is capable of feeling, it just felt all so exciting and new and holy and sacred. I started to see all these beautiful visions of me literally in Candyland. That was one of my favorite board games when I was younger, and it was like a three-dimensional reality where I was in the game Candyland, and I was frolicking through this tall, sweet grass, and there were literally like big heart-shaped lollipops, and I kept getting these visions that were like all pastel colored and so femme, and like I was in Candyland. And I was like, why is this happening? And I asked the medicine, why is this my experience right now? And it was because my childhood imagination finally felt like a safe place for me to explore and play around in. Now that I've released all these past things that have happened to me, it was like, this is your purity and innocence that has always been here, and you're free to enjoy it. And so I was just frolicking around. I literally had the most beautiful lace lingerie on. And I know that this is probably so different from other people's experiences, but I had my eyes open and I was seeing this. It was like I was transported into this other place, and it was just, I felt so light. I felt so in my body. Then I started to see visions of my grandma from my dad's side, and I saw this image of her looking over her shoulder with this red kimono on, crossing this river in Kyoto. And I saw that she was in my bones and body. I saw that she is literally in me. Her spirit is in me, that my DNA is weaved with hers, and that I never have to worry about being far or cut off from her. And I also saw that a lot of the experiences and the heaviness that I have felt was coming from her, because she was put up for adoption, and her husband, my grandfather, was abusive to her and was kind of like, this is the law. Like, you can't say anything or do anything that I don't want you to. You can't have your own free will because I'm the man of the house, and I'm going to hurt you if you do. And so she carried a lot of sadness around throughout her whole entire life, didn't know her parents, and was cut off from her lineage. And so I saw that I was kind of perpetuating that same pain that she experienced, and wanting to isolate myself from my family, also because of her lived experiences that were within me. That's what made it even more of a vital and clear message that I have to reconnect with my family, because I'll be so much stronger on a soul level, just spiritually, with the support of my family and my ancestors on this earth plane. Every time that I would have a positive thought or realization like the ones that I'm sharing, it felt like butterflies were emerging from my chest. But that was my first night. I felt so light after surrendering all of this pain from my childhood. I felt so much spaciousness, so much curiosity. And I just want to take a quick note to say that self-love is such a nuanced conversation. It's been heavily marketed, and it can feel like something that is so selfish. Even when I talk about it or hear people talk about self-love constantly as all that they do, I'm just like, so you literally just spend your whole day having bubble baths and painting, and that's your service to the world. And there has been this voice of like skepticism and annoyance within me, and I can claim that truth within myself, that sometimes I'm just like rolling my eyes when all people are doing is talking about self-love. But I felt the experience of self-love as healing my ancestral wounds. I felt my experience of self-love as actually enriching my life so much that I'm helping my family to also rise and feel these great truths. And there's no such thing as one-way liberation. When we liberate ourselves, we liberate those around us. This is our one precious life. We have immense potential. We can block our potential if we hate ourselves, if we're constantly acting out of past wounds, and we can't fully serve our mission if we are tethered to the deep sadness of our past or ancestral trauma. And we truly can do the most good if we are clear vessels. Holding unconditional love for all beings is medicine to this earth plane. Forgiving the people who have hurt me, seeing the inner child in everyone and not emotionally reacting to them, that is medicine. And those are the ways that it can look: by speaking boundaries, by honoring where other people are at on their journey, by being kind even when you want to react to someone. This can just have an immensely positive effect in the collective healing that we're all doing. So the ceremony started at 8 p.m. and then lasted until, for me, like 7 a.m. I was still feeling the medicine because I had that second cup. And so I biked home the next day, tried to nap. It didn't really work. Before every ceremony, I would meditate by this river, talk to my guides, pray. I prepared once again to sit with the medicine. I just laid there and waited. I was actually so tired this second ceremony that I actually didn't feel anything from the medicine. It felt like maybe I was high, as if I smoked weed, and I was waiting to take a second drink. Then I ended up passing out. And so the second night I just slept for like 6 hours while on the medicine. My partner's ex was in the ceremony with us as well, and we actually had this really beautiful conversation, and we embraced and we talked. And it's so humbling to sit with the medicine, because that night that she sat with us, a lot came up for both of them, and it was almost borderline traumatizing for them to just have been feeling all that heaviness. And both of them were like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know why anyone would sit with the medicine. This is so heavy and so hard, and I don't think I'll be able to do this another night. And that was the night that I was sleeping, that they were both going through that. So the next morning I was just kind of holding space for both of their experiences. It was just really beautiful that they showed up again for the third night, even having experienced just so much grief and heaviness, because that can certainly happen. I realized even from my first night that it takes so much courage to face your density, to potentially have your whole ego and identification of yourself just die off. It's a really brave thing, and sitting with ayahuasca isn't just some fun psychedelic trip. It's deep soul work, and my third night was the most potent thing I've ever experienced in my life. The third night, I told the curandero that I didn't feel anything the night before, so he poured me like a big cup, and I was really grateful. I drank it. I went back to my little mat and I sat there in meditation. Because I had shared space with some people, because I had held space for people who had really heavy experiences, I was reminded of the importance of being equanimous, of being curious, and of being in my meditation practice like I was just talking about. So I sat up. Some of the nights before I was lying back, I was lying with my freaking face on the floor. And this night I was like, I'm just gonna sit in meditation this whole time. And I also asked the curandero this night, I asked him, is everyone's experience just their subconscious mind and everything that they've learned? Like, is what I'm feeling just everything that I've ever read or picked up in my life turned into some crazy astral trip? Or is the medicine actually implanting these deep truths within me? Or, you know, what is it? Like, all of our experiences, how come some of them are so similar, but they're also so unique? And he said that it's all of it. It's literally, yes, it is your subconscious mind, it is the medicine, and even the things that you enjoy in your day-to-day life are a result of the experiences of your ancient soul, things that naturally feel good to you, that you naturally feel attuned to. It's your soul remembering things. And so because of that, everything that you've received in this life has been a result of your past, and is also a result of your future as well, because your future self is beckoning you into certain timelines. And so all of time is taking place at once, and the plant is helping you to see that. And so everything that's coming up for you is a mix of past lifetimes, future lifetimes, plant medicine, and all the programming that you've ever received. And at this point, I started to shiver. My teeth were literally chattering, and I was wearing socks, a knit cardigan, a hat, mind you, like it's probably 60, 70 degrees. And I was so cold, and so mentally I was like, where am I right now in time? And I saw myself on the East Coast in winter, surrounded by trees at the time of colonization, where my family was a native tribe and the colonizers were coming and they had cut down so many trees, which were my friends. It felt like they were cutting down my ancestors by cutting down the trees, and my ancestors were talking. They were in ceremony, smoking tobacco pipe and discussing this prophecy of what was going to happen, and that eventually the white man, the colonizer, is going to need the indigenous people to help them save the earth, and that there's going to be a major period of suffering and death, but that they will be beckoned, their stories, their medicine, their practices will be beckoned to help heal humanity, and this is just what we need to go through. And they were being equanimous, and they were witnessing and seeing these truths and prophesizing, and I felt like this young girl just listening to my grandparents speak. And the curandero came around and started singing these Lakota medicine songs, and so I just had no choice but to get on my hands and knees in child's pose, and I just sat there like bowing down to him, because I felt like he was my grandfather, and I felt like all the facilitators were these grandfather spirits. They're not only holding us through the journey, but like implanting deep truth and wisdom that has been carried down from different lineages of indigenous people. And so I was receiving these stories, and I felt like I knew what he was saying in these songs, even though I've never heard the language. My body and my heart understood that there was a transmission happening, and that I just needed to listen and receive. And this is how information is passed down in indigenous cultures, is through medicine, through song, through prayer. And so I just felt so grateful to be receiving that, and I was just bowing down and so surrendered, and it felt like I was a child of this earth with all other children of this earth surrounding me, listening to our grandfathers pray to us and tell stories. And the energy was so intense that, yeah, sometimes when the curandero would sing, everyone would just be throwing up. That was happening, and I just was thanking him so deeply for having the courage to sit with all of us, because these shamans drank the medicine to help assist the soul liberation of humanity. Every single night they're sitting and not only facing their own demons, but helping other people to rid themselves of the density and of the heaviness. And that's a lot to take on. And I felt like what we were doing in that ceremony was the purest experience of unconditional love I have ever felt. This night, the last night, was really intense. There were a lot of Kanaka Maoris sitting with us, and I felt the intense ancestral work being done. And two people down, there was a dear brother who is Native Hawaiian, and he was cursing out loud, just like talking to his demons out loud. And so everyone in the tent, being so sensitive on the medicine, is hearing him like curse and yell at his demons and scream and throw up and receive that energy. Because when you're all sitting with the medicine, you're so sensitive to each other. And I just felt like, okay, everyone, don't freak out. Like, my energy was, I was holding my hands up in meditation and sending love out to the tent and reminding everyone that they got this, and to not be swayed by his experience or to not take it on, and to be really celebrating the fact that he's purging these things. So I was charging myself with unconditional love to help everyone else know that it's okay. This is like a heavy thing that we're doing, but this is all serving our highest good, you know, purging, being in the density, cursing out our demons. Like, this is productive work, even though it's heavy and intense. So I was just sending everyone so much love, and I felt this empowerment rise in my chest, knowing that anything that could ever arise is beneficial, is really good information to know. And I talk about this so much. So everything that I share and know was just amplified in the medicine journey. So back to being shivering and being this native daughter, I want to speak to the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color, which is a category that I fall under as well. I've heard other people say that they've had ancient past lifetimes in these different groups, and sometimes that's been a little bit triggering for me, because BIPOC individuals have experienced racism and profiling and just so much heaviness in this world, in the United States, because of their identity and background. And so it can feel a little bit like, it just feels triggering sometimes when a white person is like, oh yeah, I was Black in a past lifetime, and so I empathize. It's just kind of like, it's just a hard pill to swallow, because I do know all of us are ancient souls, but there needs to be heavy just discernment carried out when talking about past lifetime experiences. And I think that we have all probably belonged to different lineages and been on the earth at different times. And what's the most important is what we do now to honor maybe those past soul experiences that we've had, to be allies for BIPOC individuals, to be embodied in that knowing by donating, by supporting, by making BIPOC individuals feel seen and loved and safe. So that for me is like bridging the maybe bypassy aspect. Because of my past lifetime experience, this is what I'm going to do to help my brothers and sisters in these marginalized groups. So this is just my experience, and it's not meant to be offensive. And I have never personally gotten to spend time with my native roots in Venezuela. So I was just witnessing it. And while I was on the medicine, feeling connected to these Native American chiefs and tribes, I felt this remembrance of every single time a medicine song would play in my childhood, or my family and I would go to a powwow, or, you know, I was always so called to Native American practices, to sun dances and things like this. And there was a reason for that. It was purpose and intentional, because in my past life, that was something that I had experienced. And that every time, you know, this Native American spiritual book would appear in my childhood, it was like a beckoning and a calling for me to remember. Then I felt like I was dying, and the image completely changed to me being in Vietnam during the war and dying again as a man, and I felt like I had a gunshot wound right here. And then the image switched again to industrialization in the winter. I was in New York City in an apartment, and then it switched to the Great Depression, and I was dying again. And it was like, just kept snapping into every single lifetime where I have died until the present moment. Once again, kept seeing all these visions of myself in the mountains, in the snow, with big fish on my back, just hunting. And I saw images of myself on the earth, surrounded by really big, tall trees, and buffalo and bears running around me. I saw wolves as my friend. I kept seeing so many wolves, and I was just petting my blanket, and the blanket kept transforming into all of these animal friends that I had so many wolf friends that was just really coming through, and I was just talking to them and literally like biting them and playing with them. The intention that I actually had for this third night that I didn't mention was, how am I meant to serve the collective? What am I here to do? And so with all of these images of my past life as what looked like Native American, because it looks like the forests on the East Coast, what came through was that I need to be a storyteller, that I need to share these stories with the collective, that I need to do more to empower Indigenous voices being heard. I need to be a student and learn and seek out these stories, that there's a huge part of myself that I will remember if I keep learning about Native American spirituality, if I keep spending time with chiefs and elders and anyone who is carrying these ancient songs. I need to help people remember how to be kind to the earth, and it was coming through so strongly, and I will touch more on that at the end of this video when I talk about integration. But I got that confirmation, and I was like, okay, I hear that, I see that. I was so excited, so in awe, had so much reverence to be receiving these truths. I was just crying of pure joy and just sitting there in meditation. Okay, I felt like I got through this death period where like seeing all of my deaths, and then I started to feel complete non-attachment, complete love in my body for everything. I felt so at peace with, if anyone wants to hate me or love me. I felt so unattached to any relation in my life, staying or leaving. I felt so connected to Source and to God, and unified within my own plane of trust in the universe and my mission here, that I felt so free of any attachment at this point and so rooted in gratitude, love, compassion, knowing that I literally felt like I was becoming enlightened. I felt like a glimmer of what Buddha and what these ascended masters must feel all the time. I started to see ascended masters that I've worked with in the past around me, and I felt like they were manifesting because I was reaching their energetic frequency, and I just felt their love, and I felt so safe and held in their presence. I felt like I took a quantum leap, all of me coming online. That's what it feels like. It's like all my cells are reactivated and fully in remembrance of who I am and why I'm here. That was my experience for most of the rest of the night. So I was just dancing under the full moon outside. I was hugging the trees. So as I was coming down from the medicine, I was feeling so supercharged, so clear. There was a fire. I want to go to my tent and go to sleep, but this fire is calling me. So I'm just like, I just listened to my body and like walked to the fire almost as if my body was carrying me there. And I sat down. I see him sitting across the fire and I'm like, I really need to talk to this brother, but I kind of like feel kind of shy, or I don't know what to say, but I was just like, hey, can I talk to you for a little bit? And he was like, of course. So I sit down and start talking to him. He's totally flirting with me. He was being very kind. And so I just start asking him about his life experience. We start talking about the modern day colonization of Hawaii, and is it okay that I'm being indoctrinated with all of these things? And what do you think about cultural appropriation? And he was telling me that, of course, everyone is going to have a different perspective on this. These practices, these prayers, songs, garments, these are things that help to carry the sacred energy of the lineage forward. And what hurts is when things aren't used in a sacred way, when people aren't, taught by elders, when people are just not fully honoring these lineages and these songs in their fullest form, because then the light and the power behind them are diluted. And he said that it's okay. Go into the sweat lodge, receive a drum from an elder, but know where your information is coming from. And for me, my perspective is also not to glorify certain aspects of different lineages just for views and attention. It was just a really beautiful conversation. And the next morning he offered to teach me some prayers, some Lakota prayers. He sent me all these links so that I could keep practicing them. And he used to host sweat lodges, and Indigenous people have been so marginalized and oppressed in the United States. That really needs to be acknowledged. I kind of want to highlight that and talk about that truth. So I live in Hawaii, and I wasn't actually planning on staying here for very long, but I fell in love. My partner does have a job that's very integrated with the island that is actually hard to do anywhere else because it involves coconut tree work. And it's been a long transition and a very intense conversation in my head, a moral conversation. I've started filming a lot more sit-down videos inside, a lot less outside my day-to-day life, because I don't want to exploit this land. I do think modern day colonization is happening, where these millionaires and billionaires are buying land and then not even living in them and just renting them out. And so that drives up the prices. So Kanaka Maoli can't actually afford to live on their own land. I just have so many incredible Kanaka Maoli in my life who have been gracious enough to teach me and share space with me, and are so open to sharing with me and you and the world what's going on here. I feel really ready to help to bring those stories forth. Conversations about if it's right to be here or not. And the truth is, like, it isn't. And Hawaiians don't want more tourists coming or expats coming, and I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge that, yeah, I just shouldn't be on this land. And I will be leaving in October, mid-October, and before then I am going to share as many stories as possible, raise as much awareness as possible, and I just haven't really had the courage to address it or talk about it, but it's a big area that felt really misaligned in my life. And I want to say that the tourism industry is also, it's a systemic problem. So even if I leave, there will be a plethora of tourists and people coming here, because it's a symbiotic relationship. It's not just the influencers or just the tourists, but it's also the systems and the active oppression of Kanaka Maoli that is taking place, and they both feed into each other. Most of Hawaii isn't owned by Native Hawaiians. It's owned by rich people who are barely here, like I mentioned. It's owned by people who actually don't give a shit about the land or its people, or who are straight up racist to Kanaka Maoli. I think it's a big misconception that Hawaii needs tourism to survive. I don't think that that's true. And at this point, water is being polluted by the US military. Natives don't have places to live. There are so many homeless in Oahu and on all the islands. Kauai is now just probably going to be an island for rich people. It's the most expensive island to live and visit. And yeah, it's just modern day colonization that's taking place. And I'm gonna dive way more into this in a different video because this is about my ayahuasca experience. But so much of my mission now feels pulled to make these little short film documentaries, and I will be learning more and more about Native American spirituality, but I will be keeping that sacred and mostly to myself unless I have one of my friends or elders who want to share with me online. But everything is just so lining up for me to tell this story and then to peace out and just show my respect. But I'm going to link some resources down below to learn more about Hawai'i, how to help and be allies of Kanaka Maoli. There are just a lot of different issues taking place at once. That was my ayahuasca experience. There's so much more to talk about, but thank you so much if you watched this whole video. I think that all land is native land, and I think that all people just need to come together with more compassion and action, actively doing more to stand up for each other. And if you truly see everyone as your brother and sister, then you're not going to be complacent about the way that they're hurting, the way that they're being oppressed. And the US government has actively been oppressing Indigenous people, First Nation peoples since the beginning of time. Every single time Native Americans were doing well, they would pass different laws or do things to completely destroy their financial abundance or any success that they were gaining. And I genuinely think it's because they know that Natives just have so much wisdom and so much power, and it would go against this capitalistic structure that they've created. I just want to continue empowering my brothers and sisters on this earth, and I feel like everything that's happening, this whole mission, the collective awakening, it's just so much bigger than all of us. And I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful that you've let me be a voice in your life for all these years, and that you've allowed me to impact your journey, and that you've brought more love into your life through the deep listening and the deep breathing and the unpacking of the trauma. So thank you for resting in all of it, and thank you for just allowing me to walk by your side. I genuinely just feel so humbled and grateful and proud of you, and I honor you so deeply. I honor this earth and its people, and I honor the medicine, and I honor that this earth needs our love, and I vow to put all of my love into this land. And I just praying for a better future. I hope to keep carrying and embodying a peaceful future within the cells of my body. And then my camera overheated for the third time over the course of the 2 hours that I was filming this video. So I just wanted to say thank you once again for receiving all of this. And I know there's so much nuance in the conversations that I was diving into, and I'm open to exploring all of it. I thank you. I bow down to you, and there's so much more to come in the future months, and I will see you in a video soon. Bye!